Among the many reasons we're happy to have him is because he was a political science professor. And I think he needs no introduction, and I don't want to waste any of his time. But he has some messages to take to you, but also to take some of your Q&A. It's a rare opportunity. Let's enjoy it. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just use this one instead. How's everybody doing? Well, congratulations, everybody. I am so excited and proud of all the work that's been going on here. I want to thank our special guests who are here. Of course, our president, who is here. Thank you so much. And this is the first time I've been in your new campus. As I was coming this way, my security detail suddenly went south on the 110. I said, that's not where CalState LA is. And I said, oh yes, it is now. So congratulations, it's great to be here. And thank you, Bill, for your leadership and for the great friendship we've had since I've been mayor and under your tutelage as well at CalState LA. Thank you too to Miguel Santana, our great CAO, for being here and spending time. It's a short walk home, so at least I hope we can justify that piece. And my extraordinary Chief of Staff, Ana Guerrero, who herself really is at least 50% responsible. I think I'm 50% responsible for this, you're 50% responsible, and Rafe's 50% responsible. So don't do math with us, but otherwise, it's something that we're very, very proud of. When I became a council member, one of my very first hires was Ana, who I got to know when I was a professor at Occidental. And I used to joke when I was a professor at Occidental, I had all the time in the world to think about problems and no power to do anything about it. Then suddenly I was an elected official and I realized I had all this power to do things and no time to think. And so I was trying to figure out, how do we marry these two things together? The best of academia and the best of government, so that we could marry power and knowledge. Because so often in government, if you've not actually drunk from the fire hose of government, you don't realize the volume. I mean, 4 million people. We sometimes get contained and consumed by our neighborhood or our issue or our pothole or our stop sign, as well we should, because that's what matters most to each one of us. But multiply that by 4 million, your mind can't contain it until suddenly one day people say, okay, here's the car, here's the steering wheel, go drive. Yeah. And you realize that so much of your time and your work can just be reactive. And all of you who are neighborhood council leaders know this. All of you that are youth council leaders are learning this, that we do have to react and respond. But if it's the only thing we're doing, then we're never setting a vision for the city. We're never able to kind of chart a course to move that, and instead we're just reacting to whatever's happening. And the tough thing is learning to do both at the same time. So we came up with something way back when called Government 101. I hired Ana because she and I had worked at Occidental College before the 2001 mayoral election to put a progressive agenda together that all mayoral candidates would have to respond to across different categories. Environmentalists used to work on the environment, and housing advocates on housing, and economic development people on economic development, and women's rights people on women's rights, and sometimes they weren't talking to each other, so we put a broad agenda together, and we were so successful with it that it didn't matter whether it was Republican, Democrat, didn't matter which one of the candidates, all of them were saying, oh yeah, that agenda, we want to do it. And I learned from Ana that really creating power was about also sometimes writing the agenda and putting forward the power behind it that people had to respond to in power. And it was so exciting, I decided to run for city council, knowing I wouldn't win. At 29 years old, just got a new pair of shoes literally at the beginning of the campaign and started walking. I never stopped walking. I still have those shoes that have holes in them. They're in lucite now, and they're in my office to remind me of what hard work's about. And lo and behold, we won. And ever since then, we've said we want to take those lessons. And so the first couple of years I was in office as council member, we came up with this thing, Government 101. That was really, now that we had been on the inside, explaining all those things we always thought we kind of maybe knew from the outside, but didn't really know. But we wanted to just try to shorten that time period and empower people. And I remember when I first started doing this, some of my colleagues on city council said, well, wait a second, if you give people the power to organize, aren't they sometimes going to organize against you? And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. You either trust, forget electoral politics, you're either a small d Democrat, in other words, you believe in democracy, or you don't. Either you want the power or you want to share it, because your vision is you're not always going to be right. Hopefully, we will be aligned, the people that we're empowering and their representative. But you can't count on it being 100% of the time. And those times when you're not, it should give you pause to think, well, what can I do better? And why aren't we aligned? and maybe you can learn something from those folks that you represent at the same time you're trying to do the same for them. The Government 101 was such a success that we kind of built on that. We did Government 102 and 103. We started focusing on housing. We did entire things just on parking. And I remember in East Hollywood, it was interesting because, as you know, there's no more contentious part of city government at the local level than land use. I always say land use is a full contact sport. And I remember in East Hollywood, which is one of the most densely populated parts of the city, we had gone through kind of some housing 101, talking about affordable housing and development. And there was a site that finally now is going to be developed, I think, where the old Sears building was near Santa Monica and Western. And in the LA riots, and for some of the younger people in this room, you can ask somebody around here what those were. But in the unrest that followed, that was one of the stores that had kind of been damaged and basically shut down. It was sold, and when the developers came to present to the community and said, hey, what do you want here? And they did the old-fashioned, well, you know, we'll show a 3-story version, a 4-story version, a 5-story version. We know we're not going to get the 5. We pray we might get the 4, but at least we can pencil out with a 3-story version of housing above a store. An amazing thing happened because universally, and we didn't tell anybody to do this, the residents who lived there said, go 5 stories in this neighborhood. It might not be the right thing for other neighborhoods, but they said, we want 5 stories here because we need more housing. And can you put a Target store underneath? Even though just down the street at La Brea and Santa Monica, a Target store had just opened. And the developer said, well, wait a second, there's a Target just down the street. And they said, well, we know that if we can go to a Target store right here, we don't have to get on the bus or find a car and drive even what might seem like only 3 miles, but in rush hour, that's a half hour away from our kids. Put it right here. And it showed me that when you empower people to actually know what it is that they're talking about, give them the tools to articulate that you can create something incredibly powerful. I come forward to becoming mayor, and I said, how do we get this to go citywide? And we had an amazing partner in CalState in Los Angeles. And Rafe, who I had known for many years, who was the right guy because he's been both into the dark side of government and he's lived in the light of academia. So he's in the perfect gray area where most things happen in the world that are effective. You know, last month I was at the White House for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where I call it Mayor's Prom, because all the mayors, big and small, come together. And one of the highlights of it is that we all always get, no matter who's in the White House, Republican, Democrat, invited to the White House. And President Obama had about 150 of us mayors in the East Room of the White House, did a little thing for the press and then closed the doors. And I said, okay, you guys can ask me anything you want. And it was exactly 365 days out from him leaving office. So it was that moment where he realized, I got a year left, ask me anything. And one mayor from Indiana said, how do you do what you do and keep doing it? And he said so many really interesting things. I mean, just the wisdom of somebody who's been president for 7 years, admitting mistakes he had made, things that he's learned. He said, you know, first of all, don't live and die by the headlines of the day. I don't care how people think about you or the editorial. He said, remember Ebola? Remember how Ebola was going to kill us all? And like in the second week, everybody's saying the federal government totally bungled it, didn't know what it was doing. He said, first of all, we've never had an Ebola outbreak in the United States ever. There's one tragic individual who came with Ebola who passed away. But after that first week of the CDC trying to figure out how to do it, not one other person died in the United States. He said, but there was no headline a few months later that said, US beats Ebola. President Obama's leadership incredible. We went on to something else that said, now you suck at this, and you're doing terribly at that. And he said, you have to have the patience to be able to see things for the long term. And it's the way I've tried to, even just in 2.5 years, govern as mayor. You can't live and die by what an editorial says one day, or what the mood is. You have to think about 25 years from now as an Angelino, when I'm no longer the mayor, when you're no longer a member of council reps or a youth council member, what are you going to feel happy having done? What are you going to feel good about having accomplished? Because the other thing the president said is, you know, once you realize that there is no problem that we cannot solve, but you also realize there is almost no problem we can solve tomorrow, then you're free to do it. You're still an idealist knowing that you can solve anything, but you're a realist enough that saying, homelessness will not be over tomorrow, but that shouldn't stop us from addressing homelessness, which I'm very proud that we took on even before things got worse in this city. That 6,000 homeless vets today that weren't in housing a year and a half ago are, because we decided to make a difference there. And when you adopt that philosophy that we all are incredibly powerful, there is nothing we cannot do. A city of 4 million people, the most populous city in the most populous state, and the greatest nation on the face of the earth. If we can't, who can? And I believe that we can. Those are not your jazz hands, that's my 10-minute warning? Okay. Civic University 2.0 is the graduate school of what we have put together. You have all now gone through not just the first level training, but a second level training to set forward, planks that are not my planks. They happen to be what I articulated in this administration, but a more livable city, a safer city, a more prosperous city, a better run city, and a better connected city. That should be what we all want to accomplish, so that we can make sure that we don't, with prosperity, just average things out. I can say unemployment's down by 45% since I've become mayor, but tell that to somebody without a job. I can say that our crime rates are as low as they were in 1953, but tell that to somebody who lost a loved one last week. I could say that we are a city which is getting through the drought and we've reduced our water use, but that doesn't mean anything if everybody starts turning on their sprinklers again because we've had a couple days of El Nino weather. And I could say that our bond rating has gone back up, but that doesn't mean anything if 2 years from now we're back in debt because we're not making responsible decisions and we have to cut again like we did during the recession. And all of those things mean nothing if we don't find each other, if we don't connect with one another. That's the final and maybe most important plank, which even though I have a deputy mayor for each one of those first 4, I've told everybody in my entire team, we have to own the idea of finding each other, whether it's data, like you've learned, that connects us to think about a problem differently, and to realize that, one part, if we want to, every part of town can say, we've really been screwed over. And I can tell you, because when I go around the city, I'll be like, the Valley hasn't got its fair share. South LA hasn't got its fair share. The East Side has definitely not gotten its fair share. West Side, we paid and we have not gotten our fair share. Everybody is very convinced they've not gotten the fair share. But once we find each other and realize that actually it's then a common struggle, that may manifest in different ways in different parts of town, we can say, well, what are we going to do to come together? For somebody in West LA to own that in South LA, as of 6 months ago, it took 3 times as long to get a bulky item off the street. That should be something that folks in West LA own. And similarly, for somebody who sees that the West Valley pays a little bit less for some of their water because it's hotter, that's something that somebody on the East Side can own too, and realize maybe there may be some justification. When someone says, why do I have fewer police officers here in the North Valley than in South LA? Well, you can look at statistics that back that up, so it's not just that we measure everything by equal parts. We look at what's the right thing to do in a city. That's why we pool our money together in taxes. That's why we make decisions. That's why we elect people to weave through that. So congratulations on what you put forward today. You had a tough, this is like American Idol, government style. It's, and we know who J-Lo is, right? But it has been a tough thing to go through. But as graduates, I want you to take that power. I want you to take that power and hold that power and pass that power on. Because the city will look back on the City of Angels as one that won't be delivered by me or Anna or our CAO or by our city council. It will be delivered by you. And I'll be proud that we've had hopefully a small part in pushing that empowerment back to the people where it belongs. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer some questions. I'll take 2 questions. And then we'll do a group picture probably. Yes, sir.
Where does the Civic 3.0?
Will there be a Civic 3.0 was the question. That kind of reminds me of sometimes, we got the Rams, I hope a couple people are happy about that coming back to LA County, Inglewood. And the next day people are saying, what team do you want next? And I said, can't we just enjoy after 20 years a day of actually having them? We often live life so much into the future, but yes, we want to continue developing this curriculum. And I want it to outlive my time. I don't want this to be Mayor Garcetti's thing. I want this to be a City of LA thing, and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment thing, and CalState LA thing. So your input on what you want to learn or do next, it might be a 201 or 2.1, in that we might go into specific subject areas rather than the next level. But absolutely. Yes, sir.
How do you see neighborhood councils in the future, working with the city council and also with your office?
Well, for me, we gotta have a gut check. We gotta either believe in neighborhood councils or get rid of them, and I certainly wouldn't say the second. But we can't live in this cynical space where we kind of value your advice and give you a tiny bit of money and then say, okay, you're part of the system. I've always said, long-term land use decisions should go through neighborhood councils. They already do informally become a powerful place to stop, but maybe there's a more formal way, especially as we look at people crying out about overdevelopment or the process or things like that. I certainly, for DWP reform, which is a huge priority of mine, it's what I campaigned on, it's what I've, for 2.5 years, pushed and moved on to bring down wait times and to make sure we have fair contracts and all of that. I don't want that to be pre-cooked out of City Hall. And so we're gonna be hosting, I've already reached out to some of you, sorry I haven't called everybody back here that I reached out to, but to have neighborhood councils actually co-host those meetings with myself and the city council to get input from the people before we put something before the voters. I don't want that to come from us. So I think neighborhood councils need to be given more involvement, more engagement, more power, and I hope to continue to do that as mayor. Take one more from this side. Anybody? This side, all right, then this side. Somebody? There's one other hand that's up here. Yes?
So we made proposals this evening, and I was wondering if we're going to
Stand up.
get feedback on those proposals.
Yes, that's coming next.
That's coming next.
Okay.
I guess we'll take a group picture first. All right, take one more question then, for substance, yes. That was process, sir.
I'm working with Repower LA.
Awesome.
And
I'm on board
Love it.
solar power
Yep.
and watts
Good,
from City Hall.
excellent. Well, I support that 150%. And I work the city council on that too. You've got a mayor that absolutely believes in it, who helped develop that when I was city council president, who's seen the jobs come from it, who's seen the greener future come from it. And if you saw Aliso Canyon, our brothers and sisters that were in Porter Ranch, and I also sympathize, there's environmental degradation around the city, including Boyle Heights around the Exide plant, but if you don't think we don't need more solar power, just look at what happened to people of Porter Ranch, 15,000 of them because of our dependence on carbon-based fuels. All right, I think I'm gonna have to cut it off there, my apologies. But I think we're gonna are we doing group picture? Okay? What do you want me to do?
if you guys want to, please come on up. Please be careful. Wow. We're in a big group picture. Please come to the middle. Careful. I think there's someone coming with a wheelchair, so just be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
Excuse me, ma'am?